Howdy, and welcome to the How to MSP podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Moore.
And the content of the SBR needs to be controlled in such a way that you have a very methodical way to say, here's the things we're addressing in every SBR that we do. Right. Here's where to get this information. Here's what it means. Here's our goals of the SBR. Here's what we want prepping. Here's what we want during. Here's what we want afterwards. And all that needs to be formalized, documented, and then managed to.
That was Dan Mallard, Practice Director of Strategic Solutions for the Iron Edge Group. Dan has been a technologist for over 20 years, where he's worked in MSP for over a decade. He's been in all parts of MSP, where he was once a client, he helped to manage and direct a projects group, and he worked as the Director of Account Managers for almost 5 years, moving into private equity space after acquisition, where he's picked up a few tricks that he's going to talk about with us today. All right, welcome to the How to MSP podcast. This is Andrew Moore, and my guest today is Dan Mallard of the Iron Edge Group. Good evening, Dan.
Hello, kind gentlemen. Thank you for having me on the inaugural edition. It's exciting for me to see you take this journey. We've known each other a long time.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited that you got to be my first guest. So
yeah.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Where does the podcast find you today? Where are you at?
Well, today I am good. I'll tell you a little bit
physically. Where do you live?
Where am I literally?
Yeah. Cause like this podcast it's international. Like, even though it's the first one, like, people are going to listen to this all over the world. So they want to know where you live and
that's totally reasonable. I live in San Antonio, Texas, and I've been here for about, 16, 17 years now. Good long time. Yeah.
Nice. It's and so what brought you to San Antonio? Why'd you decide to put roots down?
That is a good question. So I grew up in San Marcos, Texas, which is 30 minutes south of Austin and 45 minutes north of San Antonio. I grew up there. And then in my kind of first little mini career that I had in my early 20s, I moved from San Marcos. I bounced around a little bit. I got married. Once I got married, my wife and I moved to Kansas, and we were there for 8 years or so. My kids were born in Kansas. So I was kind of this Kansan. And as a little kid, I lived in Kansas a little bit. So I lived in Kansas for a long time, and really for employment opportunities, like we worked for fantastic companies in Kansas, really, really good. It was like the premier employer in the city we lived. But looking 5 and 10 and 15 years ahead, for neither my wife or I saw like a lot of career growth that could happen just because of the size of the community and stuff like that. So since I grew up in San Marcos, my wife and I just made a decision. We would relocate around San Marcos somewhere. I came down, I lived with my parents for a couple months. I applied for jobs in Austin and San Antonio and San Marcos. I couldn't find any San Marcos though. Had a good solid job hit in San Antonio and accepted the job, and my wife packed up the house and came down with our 2 kids. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, yeah. I've had the privilege of knowing and working with you both as a client and as a coworker and good friend for many, many, many years. So probably been over 10 years. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Has it been long? Yeah.
I mean, we worked together for 10, and probably a couple years have happened since that, after that. So that's 12 plus another 4 or 5 before that. Yeah. So it's a long time.
So just for the people out there,
Sure.
I've already given kind of a brief rundown of who you are, but just kind of, professional highlights, like give me, and let's focus on the MSP space just over the last,
Sure.
15 years or so. Like what have you done? Where are you at? Like,
sure.
What brings you to the pod today?
Yeah, good question. So been a technologist and IT guy for the last little short of 25 years. Started as an intern, got IT, corporate based IT positions. About 17 years ago, give or take, when I accepted the job in San Antonio, actually, I got a job at this company, and I was kind of the IT coordinator, and I had an executive above me, and the company that I got a job at, they had an MSP. So it was my first direct experience as an IT guy being augmented by an MSP. And the MSP is where I met Andrew. He was running that MSP operationally. And so I was a client. And for 5 years or so, I was a client of an MSP. And So it was a really unique perspective to have, of course. And then after 4 or 5 years, I took sort of a job in between, but then I came and worked for that MSP. So I came to Iron Edge, where Andrew was my boss for a long, long time. And now I've been with Iron Edge for 12 years, give or take. So I've been affiliated with the same MSP, kind of growing and shrinking and through different journeys for, 16, 17 years as a client or a employee.
I think it's interesting that you had started your career. Well, I wouldn't call it your career, but you had started understanding how MSP worked by being like a client of an MSP. And I wonder, what did you think when there was an opportunity to work with us as an MSP? Like, what were your thoughts there? Like, were you like, this sounds awesome? Like coming out of corporate IT and moving to an MSP it can be a kind of a shell shock for most people, but you had already like kind of been there, done that. Like you knew a little bit of what it was like maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. There's two things that really stand out to me. So at the time, the job that I had that job for 4 or 5 years. It was really high energy, high stakes. Everything was urgent. Everything across the board. Leadership was urgent. Everything was urgent. So for me in particular, to come over to an MSP, everything's urgent all the time. Everybody needs everything. Super high pace, super high stress. For me, it was a pretty natural transition.
You say? Did you say super high pay?
No, stress.
Oh, yes. I thought you said super high pace.
Yes, super fast pace, super high stress.
Okay.
So a lot of people, though, when they make that transition from corporate to MSP, they have a really tough time adapting because you're working really, really hard. But for me, that was pretty natural. Since I got to know the guys on the desk and I got to know the leadership team and I got to know the owner, culturally wise, I knew it was the right fit for me. I just knew it inside and out. So I knew where I was going. But then effort wise and sort of intensity wise, I was very, very used to that type of style. And then when I came over, it's very similar, but I can easily recognize where other people come from other corporate environments that are really laid back and people have this one little role in IT and they come over and it's just like this waterfall of work all the time. That would be really hard for most people. I just was in a different scenario. And then I can very clearly remember when I started with the MSP, I told our owner at the time, who sit couple desks away from me, basically. I said, it's really amazing seeing how the sausage is made now. And I think he took offense to that because he kind of thought, I don't know, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought, right? Like I get there and I'm like, this isn't nearly as good as I thought. You guys are yahoos or whatever, but that absolutely wasn't the case. It was the amount of effort and coordination of people and systems that do stuff behind the scenes that the client doesn't even know. I never even knew. So when I got into it, I was like, this is a lot of work and a lot of stuff and a lot of reporting and a lot of systems that the client has no idea. So I thought that was really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an iceberg, right? Like you've got like this little bit that the client is aware of and a lot of it just has to go really, really perfectly. And all this stuff that happens on the back end is this coordinated dance that hopefully works out pretty well.
That's exact. And that's, we're going to talk about account management today. That's one of the sort of, I don't want to say it's a trick of account management, but it's something you need to focus on as we get into that discussions. How do we ensure that the clients kind of know what the rest of the iceberg is and realize it so they don't become apathetic and say, my environment's totally fine. I don't need these guys anymore. But that's something you have to watch.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like when you came on board, we brought you on board to help us with project management, right? And so trying to figure out like, as we were growing as an MSP, because I think we were probably, I don't know, $5 or $6 million at the time.
5 million or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had really started that process of, I believe strongly that an MSP will follow a very specific growth trajectory. Like it's almost like scientific. Like once you get to 3 million, you're going to look a certain size, and you get to 5, you're going to look a certain size, and then 7, and then 10. And so kind of when you hit that $5 to $7 million mark, this separation, this bifurcation of responsibilities will start to happen with the service desk and projects teams, right? Where you're going to have a certain amount of people working service and you have to have more dedicated people working projects. So we brought you on board to help with that. And, you did a really great job of moving that ball forward with us. And what we found was that as we started to grow more, we needed better account management, right? We had a great account manager out of the Houston market, but we didn't have anybody in the San Antonio market that was helping. Well, there was Patrick and he did a great job with, the clients that he was going, but we were growing so much in San Antonio, we had a couple of bigger accounts. So we asked you to step in and take over some account management and really focus your efforts there. And that was kind of new to you, right? Like, you had done technical work before, but had never managed accounts.
Right.
And then as your career began to grow over time, you eventually, after, the private equity acquisition and things that happened, you were kind of managing, not kind of, you were managing a group of account managers across the country,
Right.
Really focused on trying to maintain client relationships, that sort of thing. So,
Right.
from that level of expertise, like having been a client, having been a technician back way before that, having been in the projects, right? You are now responsible for being able to have conversations with clients about
Right.
expectations, like what their business was going to do, that sort of thing. So
Right.
I just really want to kind of focus on like, why do MSPs get account management wrong? Like from your perspective, now that you've been doing a lot of these different roles in an MSP, like where do people like fuck this up? Like just to put in a too fine a point on it, like because I hear that a lot from folks who are like, we don't, we try to hire an account manager, or I'm the owner and I'm also the account manager,
Right.
and it just seems to be working out just fine. Like where do people make mistakes with account management? From your perspective.
I could talk about this all day, and you hit on some key things that I want to talk about. So I think mistakes happen as you grow your MSP. Oftentimes the account management role is filled by the owner, right? Owner-led sales model. They're this senior level consultative strategic guy. The owner is, because they have all those skills, and that person is kind of the de facto account manager as you grow, and they have the best relationships, and they have sort of the most sway over the client, and they understand business, and they can communicate pretty well because they're selling stuff and running their business, and they have this operational level of experience. They have all these skills that come together that the owner has a lot of the time as you grow from 1 million to 2 million to 1 million to 5 million. Well, those particular skills, you're kind of trying to distill down what those skills are, and then pull that out and put account managers in place with those skills in a perfect world, right? They're kind of mimicking that owner-led sales model in a lot of different areas. Well, the tough part about that is there's a lot of different skills that kind of go into that to make it really successful, to have a really good account manager. So what you have oftentimes is you have these MSPs that grow, and people kind of get put in this account management role, and it's like formerly technical people. Sometimes that works well, and sometimes it doesn't, because those people can or cannot communicate very well. They get wrapped up in the details. There's all these different problems with saying, hey, you're a good technical guy, but the client likes you. You're now the account manager.
Where they like beat the client to death with acronyms, and they try to sound smart.
Yeah. And like us, I mean, we want to sound smart too, right? But
I have zero desire to sound smart. Like the smarter I sound, the more people expect of me. And I'm like, fuck that. Like,
fair
not
enough.
Interested.
I learned my lesson. I'm learning my lesson right now. But so there's this role where those people I don't want to discount this. Having a good base of technical knowledge is a very large positive. You don't have to have it, but it's a very large positive if you can then talk about it, and you can use that knowledge to create strategy and to provide guidance and to become a trusted partner, right? That's the perfect scenario. If somebody that's kind of technical, they're kind of in business, and they're kind of strategic, and they can do all these things, and it comes together, and it's an awesome account manager. Well, the downside to all of that, if those are all the traits that you need, the downside is it's really hard to find. And those people that fill that seat the best are these small business owners and people that are COOs somewhere else, and these people to kind of come in. So then the problem becomes, well, how do we get enough of that it gives you a really effective account management layer? Like, how do we train people? How do we identify people and do all those things, right? That's the trick.
Right.
So from my perspective, I want people that are good communicators, like, that is commonly happened. You want somebody that from an account management position, as you grow your MSP, that can talk to a business owner, that can talk to a board, that can talk to an IT director, maybe a CIO. They have to have the ability to go in those situations and communicate. And oftentimes what you're communicating is either strategy or something's gone wrong. And both of those are very difficult to talk about. So you want somebody that's reasonably well-spoken, that's confident, and kind of communicate different things to the clients. That's the first thing I look for as I'm filling positions that are account management positions. Having a skill set related to the commercial side of the business and selling stuff. Well, as an account manager, your client will need things to execute their vision, or you will need to sell them things to get them where they need from a security or compliance or whatever perspective. That's fantastic. That's the commercial side of that position. Going up to, say, a $10 million MSP, which I'm very comfortable with, even up to, we got much, much bigger than that. You don't need to hire, in my opinion, really hire based on that as a primary skill, right?
Right. Because what I've found is that I think to your point, the best account managers, one of our best account managers, and we giggle about Patrick about, all the different like roles that Patrick's had within the organization, right? He was fantastic at account management, and that like, he got mad when we were like, but you're a salesperson. And he's like, I am absolutely not. We're like, you're the best salesperson we have. Like, he sold more projects and upsold clients into new solutions that they needed. Like, it wasn't like he was out like snake oil selling. Like, he was literally just having strategic conversations with the clients on a regular basis and brainstorming with them. And they were like, yeah, we want to do that. Let's make our business better. Patrick's like, cool. And he come back, we're like, well, you sold something else. He's like, oh, I'm not a salesman. I'm like, you don't have to be a salesman to be a good account manager. It just kind of happens, right?
Yeah. You have to be consultative. And I think that's the biggest thing that I take out is there's this capability of being a good strategic consultant. Andrew's heard it a million times. I've heard it a million times. When we take on a new client, or every once in a while a client leaves, oftentimes the feedback we get is we weren't getting the strategic consultative voice that we wanted.
We've outgrown our MSP, which is code for you didn't pay enough attention to me.
Correct. And they weren't being strategic. And where they were maybe missing the mark is they had a more commercially minded person that wasn't really affecting the strategy of the business, right? And wasn't tying the things that the client may have needed from a commercial standpoint, wasn't tying that into the 3-year plan or compliance needs or any kind of, reasonable strategy. So, for that reason, having an overly commercial account manager can cause problems. It can be fantastic too. And I think as you get bigger, it flips a little bit to where you want guys with a little bit more of those chops as you grow, because you have other positions that are augmenting that strategy. As you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're looking at different things on the bottom line, you want a little bit more of the commercial because you want to be able to execute at a certain level from a sales and revenue, all these different perspectives. And it flips a little bit, which is really, really interesting. So, but speaking to say $15 million MSPs with these good communicators that understand that understand tragedy of MSPs, that understand strategy, but also have a little bit of technical, and you can pull those from all over the place. And if they have those traits, in my opinion, they can be awesome account managers.
Yeah. I also would say that too, that you have to know who your audience is, right? As an account manager. And what I would say is, and I think something you and I talked about a lot, in most MSPs, not all, but a majority of the ones that at least they're probably going to listen to this podcast, are selling into the SMB market.
Yeah.
And when you're an account manager having a conversation with a guy that's running a $10 million, manufacturing company that's been family owned for 2 generations, having the conversation with him about whether or not to invest in additional software services or security or whatever is the difference between him, like, I don't know, buying a boat or putting braces on his kids or
going to camp.
Hiring, hiring another employee. Like, it's not that it's coming out of a budget, right? That's coming out of like some department somewhere. Like, so I think to your point is that if you're selling into the market properly, those folks often will sniff out somebody who's not looking out for their best interest, right? They want to trust who they're working with.
Yes.
Does that ring a little bit with what you're still seeing in the market? Because that's how it was, I don't know, 2 years ago when I was still in an MSP.
Yes. And I'm passionate about this. I've heard other people that I've worked with have different opinions, but here's mine, and it's served me really well. And I think it served our client base really well. It's a relationship-driven business, and it's a relationship-driven position. So your account manager, not only having these skills to kind of this base level of skill that I talked about a second ago, but getting them to realize that developing these strong relationships with the owners and the other points of contacts, that's what weathers the storm. That's how you gain trust. So we're going to as an MSP, we're going to screw stuff up. We're going to, sometimes screw stuff up bad. It just is what it is. A good relationship will create like this savings account of goodwill, right? Over time, you're taking them donuts, you're providing good strategy, you go to their parties, you stop by their office, you do all these things, right? You build goodwill, and they trust you. And then when you have this big mistake that those things happen, it debits some out of that. But that relationship is what withstands you potentially getting fired. So 10 million %, it's a trust and relationship position, and it's a trust and relationship business, especially before you get up to enterprise grade MSPs.
And then as far as like what people do, that really isn't going to move the needle the right way for account management. One of the things that I've seen, and I'd like for you to kind of dig into this a little bit for our listeners, is we talk about I heard this recently, and maybe I'm just coming to the party late, but like Management requires measurement, but measurement isn't management. I probably butchered that, right?
Got
but
it.
like essentially I can measure things, but that doesn't mean I'm actually managing them.
Yeah.
But I can't manage something unless I measure it. Right.
Really
And
well
so,
said. Yeah.
so when you're looking at account management, like it's take the word out of it, but you're just relationship management with the clients, right? Relationships. Like if an MSP is just like, hey, I need you to go out and just make sure the clients are happy. Like to me, that's a mistake, right? Like you have to measure stuff. You have to track stuff. Like what have you seen there that from where we started, where we didn't actually track anything to where we got to the point where we were tracking a lot of things to the point where we were tracking after private equity, like a significant amount of things, like all in that, like what have you seen as far as like people are making mistakes because they're not tracking what?
Yeah.
What are they not doing?
Really good question. And I've really seen this in my knowledge of it change through the last 10, 12 years. So you have to so if in client success or in account management, the number one goal to run the business, to give the business value is retention. You got to retain your clients. And when their contract's up for renewal, you want them to come back, right? That's more so than anything else. That's what the position should accomplish, is keep clients. Now, one way you're going to do that is having a strong relationship with the leadership level, the ownership, the point of contacts, and the accounting lady and the receptionist. Those are the people you want to have these key relationships with. But you want to put in KPIs and metrics that can best lead to that. In other words, I'll give you one as an example. The account management layer should know when an account is up for renewal. They should know that. They also should know when the client needs to put in their notice to non-renew. So say that's 90 days out, right? That's a piece of data you should pull out and track, because theoretically you want to be doing your best work leading into that when they have to make that decision. So it's a non-issue. So they're going to renew. If 3 months before that renewal notice date, you're having a really tough time and you're messing up projects and you're not communicating well, that's not great, because the odds are it's going to get into that renewal date potentially, and they make a decision to leave you. So knowing things like that, like key dates on the life of the contract, super important. Number one, when is their contract up? When is that renewal notice date? So you can dedicate enough resources mentally, or even, literal people resources, to attend to problems at the right time. Because if someone's just renewed, you want to keep them happy. You want to have a fantastic relationship. But if you have a choice of solving a big, giant problem, you have to choose one between a client that's going to renew in the next month and a half and one that just renewed. Well, you're going to choose the one that is renewing in a month and a half. You have to make a decision operationally.
So let me, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I want to touch on something you said there, but there are some of our listeners are going to be in 30-day contracts. They're going to be in handshake deals, right? Like, cause not everybody's got that ironclad contract. So when you talk about tracking, kind of where you're at with the relationship, you talked about something really important. Like, where are you at with the relationship? How does Dan communicate to his boss, or how does somebody underneath Dan communicating to him and his boss in a way that you understand that account has a problem, right? Versus, and that you can see it, versus like, you have to go ask about it. Like, how does that work so you actually know what that looks like coming up to contract renewal?
Yeah. Oftentimes when you're at these little MSPs, it's kind of, oh yeah, I think they're doing fine. I swung by the other day and they were cool, and I dropped them off some donuts and it was fine. And then you go about, and then all of a sudden they surprise you and don't renew their contract. So what I've tried to do over the last couple of years is, and what we executed on, is we put together basically it's a spreadsheet, or it's a form that says, here's all these criteria you need to gauge the account against once a year, once every 6 months, whatever. And it's for the account managers. And it's all these things that basically you start at 100-point score, and it deducts points for certain criteria. Like if we've screwed up a project larger than 20K or something like that, okay, minus 10 points. If there's been more than 3 escalations by the point of contact in the last month, okay, minus 10 points. So there's all these things, there's these metrics, there's these things that we go, okay, we know that these things are impactful and could affect the client. There's some really bad ones, there's some not as bad. Well, if all of these things get you down below a 70 score, that's red alert, right? And then we phase the coloring too. Like they're green if they're 100, they're yellow if they're 70, and once they hit 60, they're red. And that was a way that we could methodically get the account management team to evaluate every account on a consistent basis and fill this thing out. So then you take that color score, and that's the score. And you say, okay, this is Acme. They have a score of yellow. They're renewing on this date. You know, they have these other, pieces of data. We need to focus on them because you're always trying to figure out where we need to focus and where you need to send resources. So, if you have a green account and they have this and they don't have a renewal coming up or whatever, you're like, good, they're cool. I don't have to, I don't have to spend this time that I need to spend with the reds and the yellows that we've dedicated this system to determine they were red and yellow. That's where we need to spend our time. And that's what we need to focus on from a leadership team and account management team. For example, say somebody turns red, you create a policy where if somebody turns red, that's when the owner's trucking over there. That's when the COO is trucking over there to build a relationship, figure out what's going on and try to help. So that's one of the ways we did it, but we wanted a trackable, logical system where we put it in a form, it would spit out a color, and then we would attend to the client per the color.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. One of the things that I do want to get into, just to kind of start driving towards how do we do this the best way possible, right? In order to build out an account management process is what is the impact that you're going to see from being good at account management, right? So there are MSPs that, again, I've seen them where they're $3-4 million, owners acting as the account manager. They're also trying to run their business. They're trying to close new business. They're not growing as fast as they want, right? One of the recommendations I make is let's bring in an account manager. Let's offload some of those responsibilities. Let's ladder within the account so that you still have that relationship and you can still reach out to the ownership. But let's make sure that we're on top of that, owner to owner, account manager to point of contact, making sure we're walking through that process. But, once you start to free up the senior executives' time in some of the smaller MSPs, then they can start growing. And then you've got this account management layer. What does that do to the business that really drives positive results outside of, let's just say, the revenue retention, which to me, as you brought up, the most important thing for account. Yeah. If you're dropping clients off the back end faster than you're bringing them in, you're going to have a real unpleasant experience as an MSP executive, right? It sucks. So what are we doing and why are we doing this account management thing? What does good account management get you? What does that feel like day to day? What does it feel like to have a great account management team? Yeah.
It feels fantastic. No,
thanks. Yeah. That's why we have Dan on the pod, because of his amazing insights.
So good account management fills a very similar role than an entire MSP does. So you would bring in an MSP to offload some work and free up some cycles and let you do more executive level things and do these things. That was one of the reasons you bring in an MSP, to do all the stuff, right? Well, a good account manager does the same thing for the client and also internally, which is really interesting. A good account manager is taking that work that used to be done by the owner or real, maybe the COO, takes that work off of them and spreads it out and lets somebody with a dedicated skill set and dedicated time accomplish different things with the client. So that's one thing it does, but it does the same thing for the client too, which is really cool. So when you have an MSP and you have really strong account management, that those clients then recognize that and they can leverage the MSP for different things. And becomes a really, really tight relationship because you may have a CIO that every year for budget, the account manager, the CIO comes to you and says, hey, I'm prepping my budget. I need this, this, and this. Can you run this down? And then you're incredibly important to that company from there on out because they trust you to create their budget. They trust you to respond to, regulatory compliance things. Every time the auditor comes over every year, the account manager from the MSP shows up and they begin to really trust you and lean on you. And it makes the relationship basically bulletproof. So for that client of the MSP, the account management layer can pull all this different gray matter stuff off of them and own it. Just the account manager can, and sort of get stuff done from a strategic and consulting standpoint. But interestingly, it also does it for the owner of the MSP or the leaders of the MSP, because they were the ones doing these pre-sales engagements and talking to prospects and going to conferences and building relationships. So a good account management layer is successful in both ways.
Can I stop you there? Because I know we're talking about what good comes from account management. So I don't want to backtrack into what mistakes people make.
Sure.
But I will say that there are people that are listening to this episode that are going to hear you and say, that scares the shit out of me. I do not want to relinquish my relationships that I've built in my business to somebody that isn't me. What's your response to that? What's your response to an owner or an executive who's like, no, I'm good. I don't need anybody messing with my accounts. Cause they could either screw it up or they could take them from me or You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts there? What have you seen about that?
The first thing I would say is it's really hard to scale your business. And at some size of your MSP, you're not going to have enough cycles to give everybody an appropriate level of attention. So because of those two things, if your intention is to grow the MSP or for you to back out and run another business or for you to focus on something else, it's really hard to keep those client relationships owned by the owner or some other senior executive because the clients need stuff all the time. There's stuff always coming up that they're like, okay, hey, owner, come over to my house and deploy this thing on my kid's computer. And you're like, oh man. So if you want to own that and keep owning that and keep doing that and kind of lock yourself in as an owner just to do that, okay, if that's your jam, that's totally fine. But if you want to grow the business, you want to focus on other things that make new streams of money, that do any number of things, putting those account managers in place that you trust, that's how you get there. That's how the business grows. And account management it's sometimes a hard position to fill because of that reason. So, you want to get these people in that you really, truly trust.
Yeah, but I'm also like, I think the other part of it too is, beyond that component, which I agree with you 100%. Like,
Right.
I think you're spot on. But I think the other thing is, the one thing that I think that people need to really understand is as your account manager goes, so goes your relationship with your clients in a lot of respects. So to that point of, you need to make sure that you're paying them well, right? That you're laddering within your accounts, right? Because you can't just you can't abdicate your responsibility as an owner and executive with an MSP to the account management team, because if you do, then you've put yourself in a position where someone can literally mess up your relationship, or potentially, if you don't have the right non-compete or non-solicitation in place, right, they could literally go and take your clients and go to another MSP. So I think risk mitigation in that regard is really important when you're putting one of these programs together, is to say, listen, we're going to work with our attorneys. We're going to have you sign solid documentation that's going to prevent you from being in a position where you can take these accounts with you for any reason. But then also, in my opinion, the interview process for these folks is, we were lucky enough with you that we had worked with you for years. And so we knew what we were going to get.
Right.
If you're not in a position to do that, right? We used to have what was the 4-hour interview, right? Where somebody would, remember that? Someone would come in and they would do a full scenario and they would present to us and they would try to sell us stuff. And it was it was a thing, right?
It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was tough. The reason we did that is, as you're, leading me to, is we wanted to find the right people with the right skill set that could communicate well, that could operate under pressure, so on and so forth, because it is a key position. I do like what you said, and that's a little different answer than what I had. Fantastic answer, because you want to pay those people well, you want to take care of them, you want to hire the right people. That's really, really critical component to the right account manager. And when you get that right person, the sky's the limit, because they're really the linchpin between your business and this other business. They're the direct link. Everything filters up through the account manager, everything filters out through the account manager, and it's just a critical position.
Well, and I've also seen too with some of the MSPs that I've been coaching over the last year or so, one of the first questions I ask when we talk about account management is who's already doing it that you don't realize is doing it? And they're like, nobody on my team is acting as an account manager. I'm like, cool, let's start going through this. And we start talking about different people, and they're like, well, yeah, that tier 3 guy, he's constantly going on site, and clients love him. And, every time he comes back, he's got a project that we need to get done. And I'm like, maybe he's actually kind of your account manager and you didn't realize it. And now we just formalize that, right? Instead of having to go out and I'm going to do a podcast with my friend James, runs a staffing firm for MSPs out of Dallas,
James,
right? James Byer. And so we'll talk about that at the time, but you can certainly find MSP centric account managers out there. But if you find somebody that's already knows your system, came up in your company, right? We've had some really great account managers over the years that have done that, right?
We have. I think and just to be transparent with everybody, there can be a downside too, because those people oftentimes come up from technical roles, right? Or they're the lead tech that goes out and visits this thing. Well, as you start asking for more commercial minded demands, just different things that they need to do with a different skill set, you need to create this quote and send this thing and talk about this SAO and do this stuff. You have to identify very quickly whether or not they're going to take to that or not. Right. And if they are good at that, then you've hit a home run. You got somebody that came up technical that already has a good relationship. The client probably loves them, and they can do the other sort of non-technical components of the job. It's super powerful. You're right.
Yeah.
There's this ghost account management that happens and you don't even know it's happening. And it could be literally your receptionist is talking to clients and coordinating things and doing different things and running stuff down. And they're kind of the de facto account manager. People call them when there's trouble, you know, and they're kind of smoothing things out. And you never know who's sort of that ghost account manager in the back if you haven't identified it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about what MSPs need to do to build and or improve on their existing account management. So like, what advice would you give to an organization where they're like, okay, I'm going to bring in 1 or 2 people to help me manage my accounts right now. What do I need to do to start setting the stage for them to be successful and to build out a scalable solution? What does that look like?
Great question. So there's core operational things you're going to want in place for them to accomplish, such as you're ensuring they're doing SBRs. We haven't talked about SBRs yet.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I know some people call them QBRs, some people just call them. Yeah. So the strategic business reviews, quarterly business reviews, and so that the listeners who are coming at this from ground zero, that's where you're going out and you're showing the value of what you're providing to the client. Like we used to call it doing what we sell, right? We show up in the first few minutes, you're like, I am actually showing you that we're patching your computers and we're managing your backups and like, and then you go into, and now I'm going to show you where you're going to need to go over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And let's talk about your business and find out what we need to do to make sure that you're ready for what's next. Right. So that's an SBR to QBR. It's scheduled. It's ready to go. Right.
Right.
So talk a little bit about like how you execute that, why that's important. What does that look like?
Yeah. They're critical because everybody says they do them. Right. And they're critical just running your business and keeping your business afloat because a lot of business is created, like projects are created and things are sort of envisioned or discussed in those QBR/SBR. So that's really important. It's a good way for you to get in front of people that you don't normally get in front of in a formal meeting and say, we're awesome and we're smart and we've been doing all this stuff and here's proof of it. And here's how we're awesome consultants. And here's what you're going to be doing. We suggest you look at this year and next year and the following year. You get in front of some C-levels that you may not get in front of otherwise. Maybe your main point of contact is the receptionist at this business and they bring the owner in for that. So it's really good face time. But if you're coming from ground zero or wherever you're at, SBRs need to be part of your account management cadence, right? And the content of the SBR needs to be controlled in such a way that you have a very methodical way to say, here's the things we're addressing in every SBR that we do. Right. Here's where to get this information. Here's what it means. Here's our goals of the SBR. Here's what we want prepping. Here's what we want during. Here's what we want afterwards. And all that needs to be formalized, documented, and then managed to. It's that important to the business and it's that important to the position. And I can guarantee you, if you're not doing SBRs, number one, and you say you're supposed to, and you know the client thinks you're going to be doing them, and you're not, they're going to look somewhere else. They're going to get that strategy and guidance from somebody else.
Yeah. And I want to stress too, because something I've talked to my clients about, so I've seen this before. They call them QBRs. And this was like a thing that came out of the industry 10 or 15 years ago. Does every client, based on whatever size they are and whatever they're buying from you, get the same attention from your account manager and the same cadence when it comes to their business reviews? Do they all get a quarterly, like in person, showing up with a PowerPoint deck, like, you know, for a 15-person office? Do they all get the same thing? Or do you think that there's a difference in the size of the client based on like what sort of a strategic guidance that they do need?
Right. True. Yeah. I mean, so you teed it up really, really well, which is generally speaking, the larger and or more complex a client is, the more they need those strategic reviews. The bigger they get, the more formal guidance and leadership that they have, the more potentially regulations they have, the more people that are involved in these things. That scales 1-to-1 with the frequency of the SBR, who's on your team's doing the SBR, probably the skill set going into the SBR and executing it. Your question, yeah, it scales. Generally, if people pay you more money, they should get more SBRs. Simple as that, right? So, so that being said, you don't want to discount those SBRs for the smaller clients, the people that aren't paying you as much. It's equally as important. It just may not be as frequent.
Right. Because as a small business, if you're a 25-person shop, and we met last quarter, how much is really going to change in your business so that you have to have a strategic conversation 60, 90 days later, right? Like, and then that distracts your account manager from being able to focus, right, in the more important places.
And it distracts the client too. Like they'll tell you very quickly, we're good. I don't need to talk to you for another 6 months. We're good. We're totally fine. Because people come into it, like if you're the client, you come in, they're going to sell me stuff or they're going to tell me what I need and I don't want to hear it, you know? So it's not like it can be a stressful meeting for the client too, especially if they've come from an environment or an MSP that they're just trying to sell during these SBRs. They want to sit you down, get you in a room and try to sell stuff. That's not fantastic. I don't love that. Nobody loves that. So the client may have expectations of that SBR that may not be how you want to execute them. So that brings up a good point. Getting the client to understand what the content of an SBR is before the SBR is really, really important. So that the worst thing that happens is when you go into an SBR, you've prepped all your stuff, you have maybe your owner with you and you get in there and you sit down and the client complains about a service ticket that got screwed up and John can't print. They complain about that for the entire hour and you don't accomplish what the SBR intended to accomplish from a showing what we do and proving that we're awesome perspective and providing guidance. So you want to prep that client, say, here's why we're coming. Here's what we'll run over. Here's who's coming with me, and laying this as a foundation so they don't come in. So you can very quickly say, oh, hey, yeah, let's have a breakout on this ticket issue. I know that's important. I can schedule that immediately when we're done, but I've got my owner here. We have this schedule. Is it cool we go through that? And I'm like, yeah, so that's a really key component to making these things successful as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So we've now talked about so if you're going to set something up from scratch, sounds like let's make sure we'll call it like stack rank our clients, right? So we know how much attention the account manager needs to give them in order to be successful because that person only has so much time. We know that we need to get SBRs scheduled, track that the SBRs were happening, right? Getting done. And then outside of that, what else do we need to do to make sure that we're doing well by account management? Is it just client facing stuff? Are we dealing with stuff inside the business? Where are you seeing where successful account managers are spending their time and the companies are building frameworks to make sure that those things are followed consistently?
I could probably give you 30 different things as I kind of think them through, but internally, good account managers interface and they're the glue between different departments. Your service team, your pro service, your projects people, that account manager has a good understanding of how successful the service desk is executing for that client. And they're running stuff down and providing, when there's an impediment, they're running it down and they're communicating with the client from a service perspective. That's a key part of the role is and I use that analogy. They're the glue that kind of holds all the departments together. And can make these decisions when the service desk needs some direction. Hey, who do we talk to? How do we get this? So the account manager spending their time doing that is critically important. Same thing with other departments in the business, procurement, pro services, accounting, all of those things. So a good account management function will successfully sort of have an interplay with all those departments at any given time. So the really good ones kind of have all that stuff under control, but they're also executing in different systems to evaluate, do I need to spend time on this client? That's something that is always hard. You don't want to necessarily be reactionary to everything that comes in. You want to have a plan that with the KPIs, some of them that we've already talked about, in addition to NPS scores, CSAT scores, just different ways you can measure client satisfaction. They need to be reviewing these systems and then finding, I need to action on this thing and that I'm going to do that today. So you need to have systems set up where the account manager are looking at CSAT scores or looking at NPS or looking at the client temperature thing that I talked about or looking at whatever, saying, I need to action on this thing because it directly affects my clients. And of course, I want my clients to be retained, right? So having systems in place to do that. Other things that the account management layer is actively doing is with your existing clients, they're laddering up into developing different relationships. Like you could have a green client that is fantastic and they love you. Well, their CIO got hit by a bus and he has to leave. You get a new CIO in. That CIO has his own agenda. He has his own people he trusts. He has the MSP that used to work with him that saved his bacon when he made a big mistake and deleted a bunch of data, whatever. Well, immediately you go from a green relationship with that client that everybody loves them and they love you to immediately red. So one of the things that good account managers are doing, figuring out how to ladder around those organizations to develop other relationships. So let me talk to the CIO's boss. Let me talk to the director of ops. Let me, take cookies to the ladies in accounting or whatever it is. So laddering is something that can always happen all the time. But those just off the top of my head, that's some of the things that the account management is doing to strengthen internal support related to the client, but also that client relationship as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I always I feel like it's important that from an expectation management too, when it comes to what good account management looks like. Good account management is 24/7 in an MSP, right? Like it means that if something goes sideways on a Saturday and it impacts one of your clients, like you expect to get a phone call, right?
Yeah.
Maybe hopefully from your team first, but you're going to get one from a client. Like, so, anybody that's interested in becoming an account manager or one that wants to, a company that wants to put a program together, know that this is MSP. So it is a 24/7, kind of world that we live in. And so account managers are really the front line of being able to calm people down and kind of be on top of things. So I want to make sure that, when you're looking at putting a program together, you have the expectation of when you're looking at these people and you're having these interviews and you're trying to explain to them what good looks like on a regular basis. It's like, I'm expecting you to go out every week with a preset route, and you're going to go out and you're going to meet with this client and you're going to bring cookies to this client. And if something terrible happens on a Saturday, as best as you can, I'd like for you to have your cell phone to be available in case we need to talk to you. And like, it's a pretty interactive job, but it's also pretty structured, right?
Yeah, it is. And something I like the picture that you just painted on account management. And I'll call that kind of version of account management, the steady state account management, right? But when you have change or disruption to your organization or the client organizations, creates all this risk, and your clients are, according to what I've talked about, they're turning red and turning yellow according to this form you've created. Then the next step is sort of, what do I do then? Right? Because you can have this steady state account management where you're still kind of trucking around and doing your thing and just kind of rolling around and doing your stuff. But as you have clients that are not content and they're not getting a fantastic experience, you have to have this method or this system to say, okay, what do we do now? Okay, they're yellow. What do I do? I take them, like, you don't know, because it falls outside of this normal sort of route you have and all this stuff. So one of the things that you would consider as you're building a program is like, okay, we generally know whatever method you use to turn them red, yellow, green, or to evaluate their health. Well, then you need something on the backside of that to say, okay, if they turn yellow, here's the actions we're taking. Very methodical. We're going to have a 4-step plan. We're going to send our COO over there. We're going to review open tickets and evaluate everything that's over a week and get it done immediately, whatever it is, right?
Right.
So that account management has sort of their steady state kind of watering the garden clients, but then they also have the subset of ones that they're actively tacking in the way that they're getting things done that repair their relationship. And so there's this mishmash of them both. And as you're building your account management team, you want to recognize that both of those are super important. You want to grow these, you want to grow the plants, but also you want to have an actionable plan that you can mark off the things when they're done. And then you reevaluate the color of the client, say, okay, we did all these things. So that was our plan. All right, let's refill out our form, and if they're still yellow, we need another plan. We need to keep attacking and keep going in this methodical way. And then you can always go to your owner and go, look at all the stuff I did. I did this plan. I did this plan. I did this plan. I did this plan. And there's no sort of like, well, I think they're all right.
Yeah.
I swung by. They were all right,
Yeah. So we're at a point where we need to start wrapping things up here. And so I'm going to ask you for, your kind of last thoughts, and then we're going to get into some questions. So if you want to leave everybody with like the best advice that you can give to anybody listening to the How to MSP podcast on what it means to be a good account manager or to build a great account management program, like what would you tell somebody in just a few sentences? Like, what would you tell them? Like, take this nugget and this is the smartest shit I've ever given you ever. Like, use this.
Yeah. From purely like interface standpoint, like you have your person that is the account manager, I think effective and really developing the relationship and good communication. That's the key. That's what I want them doing, is developing this relationship. Now, from a leadership and management standpoint, how do we sort of ensure that that's happening? The client gets what they need and they're happy and they're going to, re-sign their contract or just stick around in general. We need systems in place that evaluate that in a standard methodical way over and over and over. Whatever that is, you want to put that thing in place and say, are we tracking our SBRs? No. Well, how do we know if they're even happening? You want to make sure you have trackable, reportable things that are KPIs that your department uses or that team uses to evaluate whether or not they're doing good, right? As you get up to enterprise, what you'll find is there's all these really cool sentiment determining AI products. And it's stuff that plug into your phone system and can listen to the calls and can evaluate your tickets and go, this client's really mad. I can tell, but those are expensive. Those are for enterprise grade clients most of the time. You can do very similar things downstream with way less investment by understanding, hey, if my client falls in any of these categories, that's a problem and I need to systematically address it. So having systems in place with measurables that you can use to do that. And then number two, the account manager is a relationship business. MSP is a relationship business. It's a relationship position. So developing that relationship in any number of ways. That's the key.
All right. Well, I appreciate your insight on account management. So now we're going to get into the part of the podcast where we ask you some questions. So at the end of our podcast, I ask a series of questions. They're the same questions, but you're going to be the first one to get them. And,
Right.
and in all fairness, Dan got them ahead of time because there's been no podcast for him to hear what the questions are. So tell me, what's the best book you ever read that helped you in business?
I'm going to go back. And so probably my kids were little. So like 20 years ago, I read Good to Great. Actually, I listened to Good to Great. I listened to it on CD, if you can imagine.
I thought you were going to be like, Go Dog Go. You're going to be like, my kids were little and I got this really awesome.
Sally Jane and the Potty Patrol. Fantastic book.
Like everybody poops. You're like, it's the best business book I ever read. Right.
Yeah. There's a monster. What is it? The Grover book with the monster where he's the monster. No, the Good to Great's fantastic. A lot of the stuff I read in that book, I was able to identify through the years of really successful things that the businesses I worked for did. One example, you get the right people in the right spots. And this is something in our business over the last 15 years, we would iterate on that annually, almost quarterly. We would talk about it in our leadership offsites. Is everybody in the right seat? And we made changes quite a bit because we found the right people. We felt like we found the right people. And we want to put them in the right seats. There's other big concepts in Good to Great that are really, really good. One of the big takeaways is determine what you do just fantastically well and focus on that. So for our business, it was really exceptional service.
Right.
And being a client advocate and really focusing on that as Andrew really grew the business over years and years and years. We were just fanatically about service and doing a good job and doing right by the client. And we did a pretty good job, but that's just some of the concepts in the book. I love it. I still use it.
Yeah. Good to Great's awesome. Good to Great's awesome. Okay. Next question. What is I stole this question. What's your favorite curse word and why?
I thought about this a little bit and I think it's just, God damn it. Cause you can use it most places, right? Yeah. You can use it around kids, generally speaking.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a button that just says, God damn it on it, made by a previous coworker. Cause I would say it all the time. Cause you just, Patrick, our guy would say something. You just go, God damn it. And it's just, it's the best.
It's good. It's multi-purpose. I'll give you that. I give that. Love it. Okay. So this is my question that I'm really most interested in because, it says a lot about somebody. Like, I'm sorry, I'm judgy. I just am when it comes to this question. Who is your favorite band and why?
I like music a lot. You know that.
I know.
You can't see in the dark back there. There's a bunch of guitars back there. And I love music. I love it. I love all different types of music. I think the trick for this question for me is what band, right? Like I love the Continuum album by John Mayer. I love it. It's my favorite album. Just the guitar work on that album is just out of this world. But I can't, it's not even the John Mayer trio, right?
That's isn't that the one where he's got the studio version of Slow Dance in a burning room?
Oh yeah.
That's a fucking jam. That's a jam.
It's just the best album from a guitar perspective ever, in my opinion. Discounting Steve Ray Vaughan, but I'd say band. This is gonna sound, we're definitely aging ourselves, right? But this is older even than us, really. Was Pink Floyd, specifically the Dark Side of the Moon album, Wish You Were Here album, The Wall album. From a band perspective, fantastic. I love it.
That's your favorite band, Pink Floyd. All right.
God, are you like from a pure band perspective?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. It's a really hard question for me to answer. But as far as band albums, band shows, like now if we did something maybe more modern, I really like the Hold Steady. Okay. It's just kind of this blend of alt rock and punk, and it's just it's just really, really good stuff. So if you like rock or punk or alt music from the last 10 years, the Hold Steady's really, really good.
Okay. Well, I've not heard them, so I'd be
really good.
Interested in
I've seen them live once.
Okay. Nice. Good to know. All right. Worst sales call or client meeting that you ever had?
God, you've been in two with me. I've one that you were not in.
Names. We can't name names, but
we've had two really bad ones. I can tell you one that you were not in though. Okay. So this client was doing a move in the same building, right? I was like, all right, cool. You're moving in the same building. I tell you what, I've got some time. I'm going to swing over there and just kind of get a lay of the land before the move. And I was the account manager of this account. So I drove all the way to Houston, had this meeting, scheduled some other meetings, go in 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, whatever, have my notebook. I'm looking around, trying to figure out what's going to move, all this other stuff. And the point of contact says, hey, just come on in the conference room. And I was like, all right, cool. Cause people have conference technology. It's going to move and stuff. So I go in there and I start writing down what's in there. There's this guy in there. I was like, what's this guy doing? He's like, hey, I'm glad you came today. And I'm like, all right. Sat down at the table and he's like, basically like, hey, I understand we're in a contract. But you're going to do the right thing and let us out of the contract. We're not happy for these reasons. And it was very Mafia style. It really was. And I sat
who was
down.
the guy? He was just
like their
random
attorney, like in-house attorney. Yeah.
Oh, he's like the consigliere.
Yes. And he's like, I expect you to just take care of this. And I was like, I thought I was here for a move project. I didn't know any of this. I can't speak to any of this. I'm not ready for this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And it was really weird. It was really a trip. And I drove all the way there for that. The guy was super weird about it. It wasn't even somebody I know very well. Like, I was like, this is a trip, man. So yeah, getting ambushed.
Did the MSP wind up letting him out of the contract?
Yeah.
They did? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made you an offer you couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like went into the server room and there
I
was
wanted
like
to keep
a
my
dead
thumbs.
squirrel or something.
Yes.
You're like, oh.
Yeah, well, I didn't have to walk the site anymore. So I was like, all right, cool. And I took off. Yeah, that was a trip, man. Like, and the point of contact pulled me aside and she says, look, I didn't know that was going to happen before this morning. They sprung it on me too. I mean, she was like upset and I was like, well, you don't get any of my time now. So
no. Oh man.
yeah,
Well, that sucks, dude.
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting fired, ambush fired.
Yep.
All right. And then one of the questions I want to ask, and
Okay.
maybe you can find somebody like who is an MSP owner or operator that is awesome enough that you think that they would be great on the pod.
So I'm going to try to go outside of the people that I currently work with. So that's what that was my goal for this question, right? Because otherwise you're going to get just sort of the same stuff, I think. So I'm going to bring
we should bring Ryan on.
If we bring in Brian Braken, it'll be
Brian Bacon.
It'll be all the same stuff. But I'm kind of going against my own rule that I just set. But I propose Mark. And so Mark Sowden, it's a guy that we worked with for a long time. He hasn't worked with us for a long time. He's kind of had a new career and he's done some new stuff. So he probably looks at all this in a different way than you and I do because we're still really close to it.
Yeah.
So I think, here's why I like Mark. So when I was a client, he started working with Iron Edge, right? So he was like a tech lead type guy when I was a client. So this is a long time ago. And I believe he came from a bartender job. I believe he was a bartender.
Yeah,
he started with no real technology experience, came in and was basically like a tech lead and very quickly was running the help desk. And he did that for a decade, something like that.
Yeah. But
he was a fantastic leader for a help desk. He did a really, really good job because that's a unique set of people. It's normally early in their career. They're technical minded people, but they may not be the best communicators. There are people that often there's a high level of turnover. So it's a hard thing to manage. So I think
if you could manage drunk people at a bar, right?
Totally agree. And I think he has some really unique natural skills that would be cool on this that you can maybe get him to talk about. And, he's been doing stuff since then that may be interesting for you to hear.
Well, I'm aware of the fact that he is now almost to the point where he is going to be a middle school teacher. But interestingly, I always think it's funny because he's like, I decided I was going to go teach middle school. I was like, well, there's probably not a huge difference between that and managing a service desk, right? Because it's just like constant chaos and people freaking out and screaming all the time.
I'd love to hear
the clients and the kids, and like you're just like dealing with 18 different personalities at any given time on top of regulatory oversight, and he's just like in it every day.
Yeah.
So.
And I haven't talked to him in years, and it'd be good for me to hear him talk to him, that kind of thing.
All right. So I will definitely reach out to Mark and see if he will come on the pod with us together.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And do it, because I don't think it would be fair for me to just talk to Mark, because I think Mark would be, I think he would be more apt to talk to both of us. So I would do that. Okay.
I'm glad to help. Glad to do it.
Dan, this has been enlightening. I appreciate your time on the pod, and I wish you all the success, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I'm really honored you would put me on the first one. And, this is a really tough job for people working in the MSP world, building an MSP. So if there's like anything, I know you're a servant's heart person. If there's anything that people can glean out of this discussion and take like that one smart thing I said and apply it, then fantastic. I'm glad to do it.
I'm sure that there's plenty of smart things that you said. I'm serious. You're like, you're super smart. You're like, but no, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Glad to do it.
Well, that's all for the How to MSP podcast. If you listen to us on audio, please make sure that you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast streaming system, whether that's Apple or Spotify. Make sure that you rate and review us so other people can find our content. And if you watched us online on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel for more information on your favorite MSP training and educational videos. Thanks again.